Hello, welcome to Skull RPG Podcast. My name's Dwight Skull.
My name's Jacob Skull.
And today we're going to teach you how to tell your story.
So the next one in our series is historical.
So historical can be kind of interesting and complex. So if you're looking at a Cyberpunk or a shadowrun game, it may not make any sense to try to do a historical thing. What I'm talking about is history with a twist. So if you've played Shadowrun Returns, for instance, which is a cool game, they incorporate a modern day Jack the Ripper into it. I'm not going to say any more than that. It's pretty much, I'm not ruining anything. You find out about it within the first, 15, 20 minutes of gameplay. The point is, their entire campaign of that video game cycles around you trying to hunt down, solve a crime, and whatever you want to do to this Jack the Ripper character. And that's a kind of a fun way to go, is like, what if I took a historic event like Jack the Ripper and moved it? What if you took serial killers from the 1970s and 80s and moved them into a 2077 or whatever type of category?
Or even how many news reports of children being missing from these weird towns every certain amount of time.
It's like the Fae one that we covered but with Matt.
Yeah.
Or the It conversation.
It doesn't have to be like a historical actual person that has a name. It could be certain events that happen in history are repeating with a slight twist.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, you could always go to the dictators of the world, corporations getting so much power that they're overthrowing other things and trying to set themselves up as a dictator, and they're doing horrible, atrocious things. What do you do with that? You can always even just look to old school literature, like, is there a character who's made a deal with the devil type of a thing? And so whatever monstrous kind of things you have lurking in your world, and it could be an actual monstrous thing, like there are dragons and stuff that exist in Shadowrun, or it could just be tech, right? AI.
Rogue AI that's left in the internet that you bartered with.
Yeah, or it could even be something as simple as, hey, here's the crime lord of the city, and you've made a deal with that devil. I mean, there's always a Faustian, I'll sell my soul for X and then realize the consequences of selling said soul. Yeah. So you could have that happening. The other thing you can do is, you literally look to any sort of media and get ideas for how to create this with a spin. And so that would be one thing I would suggest doing, is don't look to just sci-fi to figure out what you should run in your Cyberpunk game. You could look to a Western even. New guy shows up in town, challenges the existing order, and is trying to maybe rob the bank. Okay, well, how would that look in a Cyberpunk game? Okay, well, simple. New gang, new corp comes into town. They come on strong. They spend a lot of money to get there. And when they come in, they're also looking at, maybe they brought some side factions with them that just also magically showed up at the same time. They're causing havoc. They're wreaking havoc. They're maybe intimidating innocent civilians or asking for protection money. Those sorts of things in your neighborhood. Are you going to let that stand? Right? It's a slight on your honor. What are you going to do? And you can't maybe take on the corporation, but you could take on the rival gang that just showed up out of nowhere. It could be something as small as that. Could be, you could look at. Trying to think of another genre that you could look at that you could steal, but you could look at a mystery genre, for instance. You could steal and put into this, where Jack the Ripper is a mystery to a certain degree. So you could do another sort of mystery with it too, where you're invited to a dinner party, and one of the guests gets killed.
Well, another thing, both Cyberpunk and Shadowrun both describe outside of the cities as kind of a desolate wasteland. So you could have a lot of Western be brought up into outside of the cities.
Right, because outside the cities, it's going to be a might makes right scenario. And maybe you're rolling through town. Maybe you're the mysterious stranger, and you see this guy who's, like, basically destroying the small town, and you can't. Your team is like, we're not doing this. We're gonna deal with this, even though we're moving from, like, Chicago to Atlanta or whatever. We saw some small town stuff we just can't let happen anymore, so we're going to take this out. So if you're moving between the major cities, the Westerns are a really good source of inspiration. If you're in the cities, then look at historically what has happened in cities, which is typically serial killers happen in cities. Corporation and greed happen in cities. Politics happen in cities.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you have a ton of stuff you can play with. It's just a matter of how you want to play with it. And then I would suggest that you tweak it because you're going to have to for all the current tech. So the nice thing that was about the Jack the Ripper thing in Shadowrun Returns is that the guy was just stealing parts of his victims.
Uh-huh.
And there's a reason for it. I'm not going to get into it. That's part of the mystery. But you could do this similar sort of thing where you have a guy who maybe you have a guy who is running around trying to recollect the parts that he once had, right? He sold a bunch of cyber gear at one time and he wants it back for sentimental reasons. Or
maybe for whatever reason, every victim has all of their cybernetics stripped.
Yeah.
Why? Could be this fanatical religious cult that believes in body purism, so they keep stripping all of the cybernetics out of all their victims.
Right. They're Luddites.
Yeah.
I mean, the modern, futuristic Luddites that, the Church of Luddite, basically, where they're running around using technology to destroy technology. So they that'd be a fun one because they could run in an EMP. Uh-huh. And because they have no body modifications, they're not affected by the EMP in the slightest.
And that might be their grand plan of being able to do a permanent EMP of the city and screw with everybody's cybernetics enough to do a hostile takeover.
Yep. Take us all the way back to the beginning, right? Back to the Stone Age.
Yep.
And most of humanity will die, but that's okay. I mean, we should only be living off the land anyway.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, there's so many different ways and things you can do and think of, and that's what I kind of want to get you to think about is if you're reading or listening to anything historical, even modern, is there something that you can do to twist it and throw it in your own thing? I mean, my God, how many CSI episodes are there? I mean, literally, and how many spinoffs? And most of those, depending on what they are, or Laws and Orders and those things. Yeah. Most of it is just taking modern day stuff in a newspaper they read and changing it up. If you want to do this right, I could suggest a couple of there's a couple of true crime. If you're into true crime, but there's some true crime podcasts that you could listen to and really gain ideas on, but they normally will focus around serial killers and crimes of opportunity.
Yeah.
And so that's one option, but there's other things you can do. You'd watch almost any TV show and start taking ideas of how would I take this into Cyberpunk? And so anyway, I just want to let you know that if you're looking for Cyberpunk ideas and you think that somehow I don't watch enough sci-fi to know what I'm doing. That's not the point. The point is go watch some other stuff or look at what you've already been consuming. And how would you update that?
Yes.
For technology, right? How would you update a Western for technology? And you can, easily.
I mean, you can even look at your fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely.
As long as you're not playing Shadowrun, you just replace your magic tech.
Exactly, to a certain degree, right? And make life a lot easier at that point where it's I was going to have this mage up in a wizard tower. Okay. Now you have a corporate guy up in a tower who wields a lot of power. Now what?
You have a techno-mage, basically. His magic is tech.
Maybe.
So he does a lot of hacking and he controls that tower.
Yep.
Through jacking in.
Exactly. And so what does he have that you need?
Uh-huh.
And note that he created the wizard's tower, right? He created the corporate area. He's always watching. He's the mad wizard who's changing the game. Well, he's the mad corporate guy who's jacked into his system, and he's changing how the floors are configured. He's changing how the traps are configured, and you need to get to him to put him down or whatever.
Yep.
So that's just one idea. So many ideas that we've covered in this one little episode that in reality, I mean, you shouldn't have to worry about your next Cyberpunk campaign or Shadowrun campaign because you can just watch something and then update it.
Yep.
Hopefully that helps.
Hey, thanks for listening.
And for more resources, please go to skullrpg.com.